one of the biggest things that I think you can do to impact your weight, assuming you're having issues with increased weight gain from COVID times, from sheltering, maybe being a little out of shape because you can't challenge the exercise indoor as it was before with your local gym, or circadian rhythm and eating habit is off. Hey, see my video for how you're supposed to combine the two. Let's talk about one of the biggest ways you can impact inflammation, and that would be your gut. So the digestive tube goes from mouth to butt, but it's more than just a tube. It's more than just a gauntlet of glands to break down solid food, emulsify fats, and then absorb content out of liquid. It's more than that. Even storing. One of the biggest proponents, or at least positives with the digestive tract, which is sometimes taken for granted, is that it houses more exogenous or more DNA than your own native DNA. So there's something called a microbiota. It's the family of different species of bacteria that exist in your gut, mostly in the colon, some in the small intestine, very little in the stomach, and the city that is in there. And everybody's got a different microbiota, a different city. It could be where you were born, could be what bacteria your mom had, what kind of medical problems mom had, if you were cesarean section or vaginal delivery. It also depends on if you were hit with antibiotics when you were a kid, which most humans are. And then it depends on the type of food you take in, because the city, think of it this way: if the city has a couple trillion members, and you have each group has a different food requirement, then it would be nice to have little bits of food for each of those groups. But some people are very restrictive with their eating, or they only eat, say, one type of fiber. I have suggested with my previous videos the use or the intake of fiber to help lower postprandial glucose, help with just movement, gastric emptying, inhabiting more bacteria, healing ulcerative colitis. So it's important to have some fiber. I think we as omnivores are built for that. And proof is that if you do a stool culture and you check out, at least in animals, the city or the microbiota from an obese mouse, and then you put that into a skinny mouse, same species, the skinny mouse will become obese. It's because you change around the dynamics of that microbiota, the city. Now, where am I going with this is that if you have inflammation, whether it's calcium deposits on the heart, atrophy of the brain, plaques of the brain, rheumatoid arthritis, ulcerative colitis, cancer, I think that you don't have to be a prisoner to your disease. I think that aside from trusting your specialists, one thing that you can do on your own is change around the way your body reacts to inflammation. Some combinations of food practices and the gut microbiota can actually cause inflammation. Some combinations will actually reduce inflammation. In a nutshell, the immune system is meant to protect you at all times, repair, but also be on surveillance. So a bunch of different chain reactions that occur that are initiated when you're infected. But unfortunately, sometimes, and they're supposed to be quiet when you're not infected, but sometimes, especially with the gut, if you have a trigger of inflammation in the gut, a reaction occurring, then those white blood cells will go everywhere. It's thought that when the gut is irritated and on fire, inflamed, the lungs can also be triggered to be inflamed. Asthma, for example, allergic reaction that can be triggered by a problem with the gut. Or take in certain foods that you're intolerant to, like milk in some people, and it triggers an asthma attack or an acne issue. So there's a direct causal relationship, and thus far there is nobody's got the data on which bacterias inhabit most people. The profile of microbiota for your gut can be sampled and grown out. The question is, there's so many different bacteria, what are you going to do with that information? I guess the one cool thing is, if you have certain bad microorganisms, then you got to get rid of them, such as C. difficile, Clostridium difficile, terrible bacteria. H. pylori, sometimes it just hangs, but sometimes it can cause persistent ulcers. Protozoa, amoeba, hemorrhagic E. coli, salmonella, cholera. There are all these, even COVID or COVID-19. So the coronavirus can also theoretically cause problems. We're still learning about that one, but the bottom line is that the interface between your DNA and the external environment is through, well, hardly through the skin. The skin's a good barrier. Can't get in, otherwise you'd lose fluid, become dehydrated, or you'd have infections come in all the time, so you have tough skin. But you still have to take fuel in, so there has to be an orifice where the fuel comes in so that you can stay alive, and that's the mouth and the nose. So the skin, pores for that matter too, but not like the obvious pathway in. So that's why usually the defense system in the mouth and in the nose, hairs, mucus, turbinates, folds, tonsils, enzymes in the mouth, and then the stomach is full of acid. So there's a defensive system that helps with communicating with the external environment. And when your defensive system is working, you should be able to protect. When you have bacteria or microorganisms that slip through that, then you might be able to find them. I guess it depends on if your doctor or healer can figure out the symptoms and get the right tests, but most of the time we can figure that out. And then once you find the offending agent, we kill it. Sounds easy, right? Right. No, it's not easy. The problem is always the collateral damage. So if we kill strep bacteria in the tonsils or in the throat, just the mucous membrane, we'll kill that with antibiotics, but we'll also kill every other bacteria. That's why women, for example, usually know, oh, I get a yeast infection after I get antibiotics. That's because that's collateral damage. When you kill off the antibiotic or the bacteria in the throat, or for that matter in the lung with the bronchitis or in the sinuses, when you kill off that bacteria, you essentially nuke the area with antibiotic. But that antibiotic doesn't just stop in the area, it also goes everywhere in the body. It's taken there by the bloodstream. So you destroy all that really good bacteria that you built up since you were a child, since you were a baby delivered on your first day from mom. And we hope that, it's not well documented, but we hope that the flora, the microflora will grow back, but in some cases it's gone forever. Your genetic footprint, which includes the bacteria you carry with you, have been altered forever and are unrecoverable. In many cases, we can put back in bacteria, good bacteria, and develop a new microbiota, a new city, but that requires probiotics. And for those of you who don't like taking capsules, and you just do kefir or yogurt, pickled foods, kimchi. I think you are going in the right direction, but there's no guarantee. Even if you take probiotic pills, there's no guarantee, but I think your chances are better. Now, again, along the same lines, when you get that microbiota built up again, you have to feed the microbiota something, because if you just have a bunch of bacteria in the colon, a little bit in the small intestine, and they're just hanging out in that viscous mucousy layer that is on top of the villi of the small intestine or coats the haustra of the large intestine, if they have nothing to eat because you're just taking in meat, because meat has no fiber, and these little guys need fiber, insoluble specifically, but then the microbiota, the city, they have to feed. So what do they feed on? They feed on the mucus. You can produce mucus in the digestive tract with something called goblet cells. There's little cells that are in the lining, and the digestive system is so bastardized. It's a hormonal system. It's a defensive system. Most of the white blood cells in the body that fight infection, control allergies, are in the gut, not in the tonsils or the spleen of the liver, the bone. And that's so underutilized, which is why bringing all this stuff back together, I think it's important to know that if you have an autoimmune disease, if you have an inflammatory problem, if you have, if you're recovering but it's taken forever to fix things like a broken ankle, if you have a rash, if you have asthma, if you have high cholesterol, inflammation, I think there's one thing that you can take advantage of, and that's changing the city, the way the bacteria interact, the way they're fed, the way they make short-chain fatty acids to help heal, give you energy. There's a way to do that, and again, it's underutilized, underappreciated, but if you work on adding different forms of fiber, nice studies with gums, different plant gums, squar gum, acacia gum. I have a video on acacia, and I talk about getting fiber in one source, psyllium husk or acacia, but try to get different varieties of fiber to feed, hopefully, the different varieties of bacteria, and you'll have a system in your gut that's there to help decrease inflammation. If you have the secretion of, you have an infection, you have a whole bunch of IL-6 cytokine. Sometimes that's all produced by white blood cells, but if you can turn on T-reg cells, T cells, T lymphocytes that are there to regulate the inflammatory reaction, you might be able to calm that reaction down. The typical one everybody probably knows about is that COVID storm. So the cytokine storm you get when you have an infection of COVID, the doctors don't know what to do, and usually you're circling the drain. If you do a couple things prior to the infection or prior to the pandemic, you might fare better. That's a theory, but better than nothing. And at this point in time, there's nothing for COVID. So we have a huge pharmacy that we don't take advantage of. We just essentially damage it. We damage it with off-time eating. We damage it with eating processed foods. We damage it, I believe, with not taking enough varieties of fiber. Now, I can say that easily because I'm a vegan, but my keto guys, carnivore guys, should be taking in a little bit of plant. Well, carnivores maybe not. That's a practice if you didn't know. And it's got some legitimacy to it, but I really think you need fiber. So a way to turn inflammation around, treat your gut nice, eat properly, get some sleep. Another way, if you wanted to sprinkle on, and this will be a nice dovetail to my next video, fasting. I think you can shock, once you develop a good footprint of bacteria, if you want to get rid of the bad guys and grow the good guys, shock the system. Fasting not only resets your metabolic rate, it also tells the cells, your cells, to get ready for starvation, get rid of the riffraff, start producing some stem cells, because we're gonna, when the food comes, we're gonna blossom. Well, same thing goes in the gut. The microbiota, some of those bad offending pathologic bacteria, they'll die. Yeah. So fasting is also useful for the gut. That's why the digestive system is just so commensal. It's so, again, it's underutilized. See my other videos for leaky gut, maybe my probiotic video as well, and hopefully this gives you some ideas. If you have a leaky gut to start out with, you'll have to calm that down first before you take advantage of your pharmacy or your pharmacy in your belly. But there's always ways to do that. Again, same thing. If you look at my video, I talk about marshmallow root, slippery elm, DGL, licorice root. All these things are important for healing, and not only that, they're also important for feeding the community. So take advantage of what's inside you. Don't abuse yourself. We'll all get past this. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you at the next video.